Welcome to the rant fuckhole, where I rant about whatever the fuck random people on the internet tell me to rant about when I ask them what I want to do, and everything is falling apart. And right now we are focusing on Kirino's ass. For no particular reason. But I want to rant about fan subs versus official subs, which is a topic I believe I've talked about somewhat extensively in a lot of places, but I just want to do a quick little rant about it because people on the person on the internet said I should rant about it, so I will oblige for no cost to them. So I want to be, you know what? Fuck it. I don't want to be fair. Official subs usually suck because there is no such thing as a good subtitle. The thing though is that official subs you're most likely paying for, and you're going to be getting a shitty product as a result. Where with fan subs, you might not necessarily get the best product, but you're getting it for free, and you have the freedom to choose, which is something that you don't have at all within the official sub market. Uh, so let's say you want to watch something like Fate Zero. Which subtitles are you going to pick? I'm going to pick Unlimited Translation Works. I don't know what you're going to pick. You want to watch it officially? You're going to have to buy Aniplex's out of print, probably. I think at this point they're out of print. But they're a super expensive Blu-ray box set. And for a long time, the only way you could get it was to import it. I think you still have to import it, but they have like shitty PGS subtitles, and I can guarantee you that they're not going to be perfect. Whereas if you download the Unlimited Translation Works 1080p version, it's going to be really good at the cost of like 60 gigabytes of your hard drive. But that's a small price to pay if you don't have to pay $600, let's say. But not necessarily with the case of Fate Zero, but like more broadly, let's say. So with the average series, back in the day, what you used to be able to do is, for example, when Haruhi was airing, like around that era, or like Lucky Star, there was a couple groups putting out different subtitles. So you would just follow whatever group you were into. If you were into speed, you got the speed subbers. If you were into quality, you got the people who would release it a little bit later, but you would get a good version with karaoke and whatnot. That was a big reason why subtitles are good, and they're still good now. And I think like we're in a bit of a revolution now that it's not necessarily subtitle based. Right now we're taking retail subs, editing them to make them less shit, and focusing more on the quality of the release as opposed to speed. Because speed is already going to be taken by the Crunchyroll rippers, which there are hundreds of at this point, and it's terrifying. Like I have a custom nyaa link that I have on my computer that I have to update like every other week to remove the whatever new speed ripper is on there, and they're introducing like a slightly more compressed rip of of a seasonal anime that I don't give a shit about, so I remove them using the regular expression, the search term, whatever. But right now we're focusing on the quality of the release, so it's more about Blu-rays now. So what the fan subbers are doing, for example, the group MTDB or Mott Bob and his crew, what they're doing is they're getting a show. For example, they recently did Aizuken, and they got the best Blu-ray. Maybe I'm not an expert, mind you, but they got one of the best Blu-ray encodes because Mott Bob is a bit of a wizard when it comes to that shit. Stuff that goes completely over my head, so I'm not going to bother talking about it. But for the sake of argument, let's say he has the best Blu-ray encode, and then they're going to take whatever subtitles that were from someone else, retime them, and then he's traditionally done a track with just normal subs, and then one with honorifics. So you get the ability to choose. So in your MIDI player, if you're an honorific fag like me, you got that ENM tag listed at a higher priority than ENG. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, and if you don't, you're probably a loser. But anyways, that's the current status now. It's all about quality. But back in the day, it wasn't necessarily about that. You were sacrificing quality for sub-quality, which was critical, especially if you were not a Japanese learner or you didn't have that much of a Japanese knowledge, you probably relied, or you most likely relied heavily on fan subs for anything. If it wasn't for fan subbers doing work, especially in the early days of like tape translations of like Dragon Ball, um, uh, what's another one? Shit, Shoujo Kakame Utena, like some of those early shows specifically, like Utena, is a good example because it's a show that was not necessarily popular and most likely wouldn't get that licensed in the way that something like Sailor Moon would, which appealed to a lot of people. But like shows like that were only viewable through the means of fan subbing, and then there was the early days of tape trading, which I think is a really interesting topic that I haven't really seen covered in, I guess, in the to the extent that it probably should in terms of the importance that it had in the early days. But I think that it probably has, but it's been lost over time. And there hasn't been an updated thing or something on YouTube or whatever. But that might be something that I will do in the future, but it would require a lot of extensive research and interviewing people, and I don't talk to people. But anyways, the fan subbing, the tape trading, especially between universities, and anime clubs used to be important. Now they're fucking shit. I guarantee you that every anime club in a university in this country is shit now. I've been to one and I've seen them all. I've been to there's no reason to go to more. But that's when they used to be important. That you used to be a part of something. And it was like the early sci-fi clubs within Japan. Like, that's how Gainax got their start in one of those clubs. But as we started to move more online in IRC chats and torrenting got popular, peer-to-peer software and whatnot, anime tape trading began to decrease as we started to see more HD TV rips with fan subs. And this is one of the things I like to bring up when I talk about retail subs versus fan subs, is the importance of fan subs, not simply for bringing us the anime, but it's also almost entirely responsible for the creation of the Western otaku community, or at least the like the level of anime knowledge we have now wouldn't be possible without fan subs, and not specifically anime knowledge, but also otaku culture and Japanese culture. One of the things that fan subs are notorious for is their mistranslations of certain lines, all according to Keikaku. TL note Keikaku means plan, or TL note Yuki means snow, that kind of shit. Like, that was notorious. Like, people were like, why don't they fucking translate onigiri? But then when I see it in a retail sub, like, they translate onigiri as riceball, I'm like, dude, that's like 3 times the amount of text you need to put on screen just to put that. Or, like, it's just mildly infuriating when I see shit like that now. Whereas back in the day, the translators would make an attempt to teach you something at the same time, which is retail subs these days are getting a little bit better at that, but not necessarily perfect in their way that I would like to, because I think it's also a learning experience whenever you're watching an anime. Like, if you're watching a Western TV show, dude, you're not it's worthless, okay? No Western television, no live action show has any merit whatsoever. That's just objectively true. Anime, on the other hand, is for the thinking man, as we see here. But, like, through translation notes, if they're not overdone, or they're not egregious, or they're not done with ill intent, I suppose, like, intentionally not translating certain words and then putting them up there, like, all according to Keikaku, TL note Keikaku means plan, which wasn't actually a real translation, as I found out this past weekend, because someone uploaded the fan subs for that specific episode of Death Note, I believe it was 26, on nyaa. It was like 3 or 4 different groups, and they all put it, and then the uploader showed screenshots from the show, and none of the lines were translated like that. So it was a meme translation done most likely after the fact. But the point is that millions of people around the globe now know that Keikaku means plan in Japanese. And in the same way, like, a lot of people who grew up in the early 2000s watching fan subs, or at least people like me too, who go back and watch them and download them, thanks to the archiving efforts by a lot of people, we're able to understand what these words mean now, and not just the words either, but just like have an appreciation for Japanese culture as a whole. Because I feel like if you're watching an incredibly localized version of a show or like a dub, you're not really getting anything out of it besides like the base level entertainment, and perhaps you learn a thing or two because the show is intentionally trying to teach you something. Like with You Do Camp, it teaches you a thing or two about camping. Um, but if you're watching it in Japanese, you might actually pick up a couple things. Like my brother recently started to get into anime, and he knows a couple words now because he watches shit in Japanese. Um, and like that level of knowledge wouldn't be possible otherwise with fan subs, without like subtitles in general, but fan subs as well. Um, and you're definitely missing out on something if you're watching it dubbed, because there's that cultural exchange that's subconsciously happening there that you wouldn't have otherwise without the fan subs, I guess. And like just watching a show and then seeing how the other culture and being open to the idea of learning that, hey, they have a different word for this piece of food. We don't have to translate it. Like, wouldn't it be really weird if they translated like words in Spanish and they brought them over in English, and they would bring it as like something completely different? Or same thing with like something in Italian, and like we have an Italian food over here, and then they completely change the word or something like that. Like, what's a word? Like, I don't know. I just thought of linguine. Linguine came to mind, or like tortilla or something. Like one of those words is like a proper noun in the language that it's from. They decide to translate like tortilla is cornbread or something stupid, or like corn pita or something. And that's how I feel when I see translations of onigiri as rice ball. That you're missing out on something, because that is clearly it is a rice ball, but it's also an onigiri in the same way that ramen is ramen. It's not noodle soup. And not only that, but you have the translation quality as well. It tends to be a bit better with fan subs IMO, mostly because I'm pretty particular about translations, which is kind of stupid because I have a decent level of Japanese knowledge to the point where if you're someone who's correcting subtitles, you don't really need subtitles. But it's mildly infuriating to see that, because then you know that there are other people out there who don't share the same knowledge that you do, are watching it, and then you're getting the wrong picture, because translators should be the one who is the transparent, I guess, medium between you and the piece of media, that you shouldn't even know that they exist, because you're just watching the show in the language as the artist intended, not colored by the translator. All right. But yeah, fan subs are far superior. I really like archiving fan subs. I have an entire hard drive full of that shit, because I think they certainly have value. I would rather have a show and watch it with like 2005 hard subs, HD TV rip, as opposed to the retail sub version, regardless of the quality of the fan sub. That I just find fan subs inherently interesting, whereas the retail subs are usually shit. Or maybe not they're shit, but they're not. They don't give you anything, because I've reached the point where I'd rather read a bad translation with a fan sub than with anything else. For example, I watched Trinity Blood recently, and the show included copious amounts of translation notes, which might not necessarily have been important, but they did shed a bit of history. For example, like there were some certain characters who were named and referenced to other things within the Catholic Church or within the Vatican or whatever. The various characters who had analogs in history or whatever. And like when I'm watching an anime, I like if I see that a character is called so and so, I'm not gonna go to Wikipedia immediately and watch it. I'm way too lazy to do that. But the translators did that, and they said like, hey, this guy's name is actually a reference to this, or this character is a reference to that, and the subtitle quality improved because of that. And I feel that a lot of cases, translation notes should be used at least sparingly. But overall, fan subs are honestly just superior. They're what I prefer, and they're free, which I think is the best option for those.